Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Praetor Magic. I am your host, DM Cross, and if you're watching this video the day it came out, then you already know it is Deck Tech Tuesday here on Praetor Magic. This is episode 3 of our Commander 2017 predictions, where we're going into tribes that I predicted might come out in Commander 2017 along with their color schemes. We've already done Esper, which is white, blue, black zombies, Abzan, which is white, black, green elves, and now we're doing Jund, green, black, red Goblins, led by the King of Dragons, or at least the King of Jund Dragons, because I guess Scion of the Earth Dragon is probably the King of Dragons. Whatever, he's 5 colors. He's got 2 colors that we don't have, but what are you going to do? Anyway, King of Jund Dragons is Prossh, Skyraider of Kher. The reason why I chose Prossh is because it's a very combo heavy build, and Prossh comes with some combos all his own. We're going to get into those a little bit later. But first, let's look at what he does. He does something that every Goblin commander really wants, and that's to bring an army with him every time he enters a battlefield. So he starts off costing 3 generic, a black, a red, and a green. He's a 5/5 flyer, legendary creature dragon. When you cast Prossh Skyraider of Kher, put X01 red kobold creature tokens named Kobolds of Kher Keep onto the battlefield, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast Prossh. So this is really important to remember, that it's the amount of mana spent to cast Prossh. As we know in Commander, you have commander attacks. Every time your commander dies and goes to the command zone, he or she costs 2 more mana each and every time. So the first time you're going to get 6 of these kobolds. The next time you're going to get 8. Then you're going to get 10, then 12, and it's just going to keep going. The more and more that Prossh has to come back onto the battlefield, the bigger of an army he's going. He goes back to Kher Keep, and he goes like, alright, more of you guys. We didn't do it with the first batch, let's get more. His bottom ability does read sacrifice another creature, and Prossh gets +1/+0 until end of turn. That's a great thing, but for this deck, it's not going to really matter. Keep in mind it says sacrifice another creature, not kobolds specifically, so you can be sacrificing goblins. And for the purpose of this deck, kobolds are going to be honorary goblins underneath our Lord and Savior Prossh Skyraider of Kher. So category 1, as we are known to do, is going to be ramp. Prossh has a few interesting ramp cards that work best with him and his kobold/goblin army, and we're going to talk about those. For starters, Cryptolith Rite. I think we've talked about this one in other decks, maybe the Abzan deck, but Cryptolith Rite is a green enchantment that costs 1 and a green, and creatures you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Why is this so good in Prossh? So if you get up to 6 mana, cast Prossh. Prossh doesn't even have to enter the battlefield. He can get countered, he can get killed immediately, it doesn't matter. You still have now 6 kobolds, which means you have 6 more mana. You already had 6 mana to cast Prossh. Now you have 12 mana with Cryptolith Rite on the field. That's super good, and with the more and more goblins you're going to get, because trust me, you're going to get a lot of goblins, it's just more and more mana. It's more and more ways to keep doing more broken stuff and keep winning the game. The second card that I want to talk to you is super cool. It's also brand new. It is going to be Neheb the Eternal. Neheb the Eternal is a new card from Hour of Devastation. He is a legendary zombie minotaur warrior. He's a 4/6. He costs 3, a red and a red. He has Afflict, which says if you block him, you lose. The defending player loses 3 life. So you can not block him and take 4, or you can block him and lose 3 life. Keep in mind that Afflict does lose life, it doesn't deal damage. That can come into play in a couple different little ways that doesn't really matter for this deck, but it potentially could come into play later on in other decks. His really cool ability that makes him a ramp card is at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red mana to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So if you're playing in a multiplayer game, as we tend to do in Commander, and you hit a lot of people for little bits of damage, all the life lost turns into red mana, which means you could just keep going. You could be tapped out, but now you have all this red mana. And granted that Neheb's probably best in like a mono red deck or a red dominant deck because it's specifically red colored mana. Still, you cannot deny that that is a lot. Keep in mind that if he attacks, you're either getting 4 mana or 3 mana unless somebody can like Maze of Itham Fog or something and basically prevent damage from happening. So either way, you're probably getting at least 3 or 4 mana back, unless it's one of those rare situations. The third card we're going to talk about is actually a card from a few years ago, and I think it's kind of underrated in Gruul colors, but it's going to be Xenagos the Reveler. He's a Planeswalker, as you can see. He starts off with 3 loyalty, and he costs 2, a green and a red, and his +1 is really the one that we're worried about. His +1 says to add X mana in any combination of red and green equal to your mana pool where X is the number of creatures you control. Again, this is a token deck. You are gonna have a million goblins. With Xenagos on the battlefield, you are gonna have a million mana. His 0 ability puts a 2/2 satyr, red and green satyr token onto the battlefield, which isn't super great. And his -6, you can exile top cards of your library. I don't know, 7 top cards? Well, regardless, it's basically like a weird version of some of Chandra's ability where you exile cards and you can cast them. That's not why we want Xenagos. We want Xenagos because he's ramping us up like crazy. The last one is almost a simple little card. It's a very simple artifact that you're going to probably see in a lot of decks because of what it does. Expedition Map is a 1 mana artifact, and then 2 tap it and sack it. You can search your library for a land card. A land card. Not a basic land, a land card. Reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. A lot of times, as you can see when we're talking about the rest of the deck, you're going to be looking for one of 2 things. There's actually one category in this video is going to be land specific. You can look for any one of those 4, but out of all of these, I think I'm going to look for either Urborg, Tome of Yawgmoth, or Cavern of Souls, and they're going to pop up in the video later on. However, category 2 is going to be, what do you do when you have, I keep talking about how you're going to have a million goblins. I saw Neheb on the screen, it's like zombie. What do you do when you have a million goblins? Well, goblins are a unique monster race. They're unique because they're so numerous that they're basically cannon fodder. They have a culture where you can just throw goblins at a problem until the problem's either dead or destroyed, or it doesn't matter. Will those goblins die? Sure, but that's a sacrifice that they're willing to make in order to get the job done, and sack life, is exactly the name of this category. We're going to be using our goblin tokens in a number of ways. Sometimes they're going to die in order to get those things. Just like if you use Skirk Prospector or Ashnod's Altar. You can sacrifice a creature, well, so Skirk Prospector, you can sacrifice specifically a goblin to get red mana. However, Ashnod's Altar, you can sacrifice anything, to include the kobolds that Prossh brings out, to get 2 colorless mana. So now we're getting different things. Again, unfortunately, it's not black or green, but what can you do? Some of the things that you do want to note is that you can sack a goblin or a kobold and basically pay for the commander tax from Ashnod's Altar. There's a couple other ways that sacrificing is going to come into play. We're going to get into that in a second. The second card, though, that we want to talk about for sack life is Food Chain. Food Chain is one of those cards that I was talking about earlier when I said that Prossh comes with some infinite combos of his own. For 2 and a green, this enchantment, this is the old wording. I believe it's been errata to say exile a creature you control, add X mana of any color to your mana pool, where X is the converted mana cost of the creature you sacrificed plus 1. So basically, that's a little confusing, right? Basically what you could do, you could cast Prossh for 6 the first time. He's going to come in and create his 6 kobolds. You can exile Prossh and get 7 mana of any one color. Okay. That doesn't cover command tax, and it also doesn't fix the fact that it's all one color. Well, you just created 6 kobolds. You have 1 color down. Let's say, we'll just say we pick green with Prossh. So we now have 7 green mana because we exiled Prossh. So you mean then I can sacrifice or exile another goblin to get 1 black because they don't have a converted mana cost, so 1 plus 0 is 1. And then another goblin or kobold to get, I'm sorry, they're honorary goblins, another goblin to get 1 red. And then recast Prossh for 8, while you still have 4 kobold goblins on the field from the first casting, and now you're going to make 8 more to go to 12. And then you can do it again. Do you see? Do you see where this already becomes insane? Basically, you can keep doing this and keep doing this for basically an infinite number of kobolds. Does that matter? Well, let's find out. Goblin Bombardment says it matters. Goblin Bombardment said it matters all day long. Goblin Bombardment says for 1 in a red, this enchantment allows you to sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So you can make infinite goblins, and then you can sack infinite goblins for infinite damage to target creature or player. So if somebody doesn't interrupt you, the game's over? We're not even in the combo part of this thing, and we're already finding infinite combos because Prossh comes with his own. But let's say you don't have Goblin Bombardment. Can you still infinite with Prossh in a way that matters? Do you need haste? No. You could just make infinite goblins and then sacrifice them to any other kind of sacrifice outlet like Sadistic, Hypnotist, and Attrition. For 1 black, which you can get from Food Chain, Sadistic Hypnotist basically allows you, I'm sorry, not Sadistic Hypnotist, Attrition allows you to sacrifice a creature, destroy target non-black creature. If you're going up against a mono-black deck, well then Attrition's not the card you want to be playing anyway, unless you're looking for the death trigger. However, Sadistic Hypnotist doesn't care what color any of the creatures are on the field, because what it says is sacrifice a creature, target player discards 2 cards. And you can only activate it during any time you can activate a sorcery. So you can't do it at instant speed. You can't do it like on their draw step and make them instantly sacrifice that card that they just drew. However, you can make it very hard for them to keep a hand. I will say that in like the Praetor Magic setting, I typically tend to steer away from discard based decks because it's not a lot of fun to sit there without cards in your hand. But depending on what your meta is, you could be really competitive, you could be just trying to win, you could not know these people and not care. That's not my, I'm not here to judge, you do you. This is a good card that allows you to keep your opponents from having anything in their hand for most of the game, until they try to kill it. However, that's going to be it for Sack Life. There's going to be a couple other things later on in key components, I believe, where the sacrifice becomes even more prevalent, but I want to talk to you a little bit about those lands we were talking about previously. So category 3 is the awesome lands. Certain cards, certain kinds of decks have certain kinds of lands. Tribal decks have one specific land that they always want, and it's Cavern of Souls. This is one of the lands that I would definitely fetch with an Expedition map. It basically says that when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You can either add colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So green, black, red. You can also do white and blue if you wanted, because of the change in the way they did commander rules. But for this purpose, obviously, you're going to want to cast a green, black, or red spell. And that spell can't be countered. That's the important part. We are green, red, and black. We don't have a lot of time or space for counter spells. They're also very rare in our colors. I think there's maybe 10 total across all 3 colors combined, ways that you can counter things. So you're not going to be able to play counter magic. You can try to do some other things. There's probably another way. There's Conqueror's Flail, which if it's equipped to a creature prevents your opponents from casting spells during their turn. But this is a land that basically says this spell, you're not going to counter it. This goblin spell, you're not going to counter it. The next land I'm going to talk to you guys about is Hall of the Bandit Lord. Hall of the Bandit Lord is not necessarily tribal, but it does help you get things moving faster. It comes into the battlefield tapped. It's also a legendary land, and if you do tap it and pay 3 life, you can add 1 colorless mana, I believe this has been errated to your mana pool. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, that creature has haste. There are a couple creatures in here that you want to have haste. Prossh is one of them. You may want Prossh to come out with his goblin or kobold army, have haste, and swing in, sacrifice creatures, pump him up, and one-shot somebody. You may want cards like, I don't know, maybe Krenko's in the deck. I don't know, it's just a goblin deck, and I'm just a Krenko player. I don't know what to tell you. Krenko's probably in the deck. You put Krenko on the battlefield with Hall of the Bandit Lord. Krenko can tap that turn and make a buttload of goblins. I don't care if there's only 1 out, he's going to just be doing exponentially amazing things. He's a good commander. I'll probably do a deck tech about him at some point. Third land that we're going to talk about is Urborg Tome of Yawgmoth. I think I've talked about this one in previous videos, but it's a legendary land where it says each land is a swamp in addition to other land types. Why is that so important? Why would I want to use Expedition Map to find that? Because Cryptgas is in this deck. Cryptgas is a creature that says all your swamps give you an extra black mana in addition to whatever they were tapping for. Urborg turns all your lands into swamps. You can tap for your mountain for red. It's also a swamp. Cryptgas says you get another black for that. You're almost doubling your mana production. The last card that we're going to talk about for lands is Westfall Abbey. Talked about this before. Westfall Abbey. You can pay mana to create 1/1 white clerics, or they're like white and black clerics. I don't really care about that. I care about the fact that you could tap 5, tap it, sack 5 creatures, and transform it into Ormondal, Profane Prince, which is a 9/7 flying indestructible lifelink haste legendary demon. He's not a goblin, but he hits like a 9/7 flying lifelink indestructible haste demon. And you have tons of goblins, and we just talked about how you're going to be sacking tons of goblins. This is a land that turns into a demon-like lord And all you have to do is sacrifice goblins. You're gonna have goblins. Sacrifice the goblins. But that's it for lands, guys. The next part is gonna be a really cool category that I personally like because I get to highlight a lot of interesting cards in the deck. It's gonna be key components. So what are key components? Key components, basically, there's a lot of different little ways that this deck can win. You can hit somebody with Ormondal a million times. You can token swarm, but sometimes combat is not necessarily the most reliable way. There's control decks out there. There's things like the dreaded Sphere of Safety, which I hate. There's Ghostly Prison. There's all kinds. There's Light Minefield. Light Minefield destroys goblin decks because most goblins come in as 1/1s. Light Minefield basically says for every creature that attacks, deal 1 damage to all creatures for every creature that's attacking. So if a 1/1 attacks, it kills itself. If a 2/2 and a 2/2 attack, they kill each other, etc., etc. So when something like that's down, you're essentially stopped in your tracks. So you need ways to win that isn't combat based. So let's start with just those creatures entering the battlefield. Purphoros, God of the Forge, is a 3 and a red 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god. He's indestructible. As long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Purphoros is a creature, but you don't need him to be because, again, we're not worried about attacking. His bottom ability is cute. You can basically pay to fire breathe. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. I think it's 2 in a red. Who cares? That's not what we're doing here. However, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Purphoros deals 2 damage to each opponent. If Prossh comes out for the first time on, let's say, turn 5 after you played Purphoros, he costs 6. He comes in with 6 goblins. That's 7 creatures. 2 damage times 7 creatures to all opponents is 14 damage. Let's say in a 4-player game. Let's see, that's 30 plus 12 is 42 damage. If you have Neheb out, you just got 42 red mana? Alright. Sounds broken. Second card I want to talk about that's a key component, Coat of Arms. Coat of Arms helps you a little bit with things like Light Minefield and just people being able to chump block your goblins or give -1/-1 to your field, because that's, not super annoying when all you have are 1/1s. Coat of Arms says, as an artifact that costs 5 mana, each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. For example, I'm going to read the reminder text or the extra text. If 2 Goblin Warriors, it's funny how they put 2 Goblin Warriors when we're in a Goblin deck, right? It's almost as if Coat of Arms was made for goblins. If 2 Goblin Warriors and a Goblin Shaman are on the battlefield, yes, each gets +2/+2, because it doesn't count itself, and the Warriors, it doesn't matter about the Warriors because they see the fact that there's other goblins. There's a whole bunch of rules to this. Sometimes I mess it up. I'm going to let you guys read the rules. I'm not going to try to quote rules to you and get them wrong. Coat of Arms, basically, if you have goblin tokens, if you have 10 goblin tokens, they each get +9/+9 because they don't see each other. That's the big part about this. So your 1/1s become 10/10s. You got 10 goblins, they're 10/10s. That's how this works. It's amazing. I love it. If only you had, I don't know, Stalking Vengeance in the deck, where every time a creature dies, you can deal that much damage to a target player. And then a sack outlet. If only the deck ran off sacrificing things. The third card we're going to talk about is a key component because there's not a lot of recursion in the deck. Wart Boggart Auntie is a legendary creature, Goblin Shaman, 3/3. She costs 2, a black and a red. She has Fear, which I really don't care about. What I do care about is at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target goblin card from your graveyard to your hand. I just said we didn't have a lot of recursion. Found it. So I think there's like 1 or 2 other cards, but Ward is basically one of those things that can sit back, do almost nothing, but she's always putting in work because she's making you recur your cards over and over and over and over again, especially when you have a lot of sacrifice. That's probably the worst part of this deck, is that you don't always have the most recursion, so having a recursion engine could be really good in this, but you had to kind of, make some sacrifices, get it, in order to have all the goblins and everything else. The next card, the last card that we're going to talk about that's key components, is actually 2 cards. And these are the cards that I was talking about a little while ago that we're going to see the death triggers really come into play. Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat. They are both a 1 and a black. I don't remember what Blood Artist is, but they are a 1/1 and a 0/1. And basically they do kind of the same thing. Zulaport Cutthroat says, Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. I believe Blood Art says that when any creature dies, you may have an opponent lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. So they're kind of the same, kind of not the same. They both do kind of the same thing, and you're going to have a lot of sacrifice going on. So if you can keep these things out, or, you know, keep one of them out, one of them back, it doesn't really matter. You have an enter the battlefield effect with Perforos and a leaving the battlefield with Zulaport Cutthroat. If it's a goblin that you're constantly sacking, you can bring him back with Vargard Auntie, and then for the creatures that stay on the battlefield, Coat of Arms just makes everything huge. So those are your key components. However, key components aren't what I expect you to win the game. I believe Perforos can win you the game, Coat of Arms can win you the game, but the way I really think the deck's always going to win the game, or consistently going to win the game, is with our Wombo combos. The win cons, the Wombo combos. I only highlight 4. I believe there's a few others in the deck, but these 4 I think were either the most important, or the simplest, or just my favorites. I can't remember which, but let's talk about them really quick. This is definitely one of my favorites. I know the first one is. Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker and Lightning Crafter. Kiki-Jiki is a legendary Goblin Shaman for 2 red, red, red haste, and she says tap, put a token that's a copy of target creature onto the battlefield. It has haste and exile it at the next end step. Lightning Crafter is a 3/3 for 3 in a red, and says that, well, the important part of this is that it can tap to deal 4 damage to target creature or player. The other important part about this is that you have to champion a Goblin or Shaman. Why is that important? If you have a sack outlet, or if you want Lightning Crafter to shoot itself for 4, you champion Kiki, she exiles under Lightning Crafter, goes away after she's tapped and made the token, then you either kill the token somehow, whether it's sacrifice or shooting itself, and it goes away, and the card that you exiled to champion, it comes back. Now Kiki's back on the battlefield untapped because she's re-entered the battlefield. So what does this do other than play with yourself and constantly remove Kiki and re-enter the battlefield and remove and re-enter the battlefield? Well, if Lightning Crafter is always shooting itself and dying, and then Kiki's constantly entering the battlefield and bringing something back onto the battlefield like Lightning Crafter, your enter the battlefield effects from Perforos and your leaving the battlefield effects from Zulaport Cutthroat and Blood Artist are constantly triggering. So you're constantly dealing a lot of damage every time something dies and every time something comes back. And if you're sacking Lightning Crafter to, let's say, Skirk Prospector or Ashnod's Altar or Food Chain, you're now getting mana for these transactions, which you can then use to do other things. Keep in mind, if Neheb's on the battlefield and you're causing your opponents to lose life through your enter the battlefield or leaving the battlefield effects, you're going to get a lot of mana in your post-combat main phase. That's how the deck works. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. Things keep going, things keep going. It's crazy. So you can win that way. The next one is pretty common in token decks. Court of Calling into Praetor Behemoth. Court of Calling has Convoke. You pay into X. You go find a card that has converted mana cost equal to or less than X. I don't remember which. If it's equal to, Praetor of Behemoth costs 8. You pay into 8. It's X green, green, green. It's an instant. You need to pay 8 in X if it's exact. I can't read the card from here, but if it says or less, I think it does say or less, you need to pay at least 8 to go find Praetor of Behemoth. Praetor of Behemoth comes onto the battlefield. It has haste. I just said it costs 8. It's 5 green, green, green. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get plus X, where X is equal to the number of creatures you control. We just talked about how you're going to have 1,000,000 goblins. Praetor of Behemoth just gave you plus a million to all your creatures. Not to mention itself. And it has haste. Holy poop. You're probably going to win off of that. I guarantee you, unless they have some kind of way of fogging or anything like that, you're probably going to win the game off of Praetor of Behemoth, which you can find off Court of Calling. Next combo, Cranko the Mob Boss. I told you he might have been in the deck. I'm not going to... It's a Goblin deck. I'm a Cranko player. Sue me. This one is not an infinite combo. However, it is a lot of fun. You're going to make tons of Goblins tons of different ways. Cranko is a legendary creature Goblin Warrior. He's a 3/3, costs 2 red and a red, and he taps to put X 1/1 Goblin tokens, where X is the number of Goblins you control. Just from the cards that are on the screen right now, that's 3. Lightning, Crafter, Kiki, Jiki, and Krenko himself. So if Krenko taps with those cards on the battlefield, he will create 3 more goblins. If they don't all die, and next turn he taps again, you had 3, you made 3, you have 6. Krenko will make 6. Compound interest. It will always double. If people don't board wipe or do something about Krenko, it's going to get out of control. 3 turns into 6, 6 turns into 12, 12 turns into 24, 24 turns into 48, 48 turns into 96, and I'm not doing any more math after that. So what's the second card? Voracious Dragon is a 3 red 4/4 flying dragon that has Devour 1 on it. So when it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice a certain number of creatures, as many as you want, and for every creature you sacrifice, Voracious Dragon gets a 1/1 counter because it's Devour 1. If it had Devour 2, you'd get 2 1/1 counters for every 1 creature you sacrifice, but it's not quite that broken. However, when Voracious Dragon enters the battlefield, target opponent, or target player, or target creature, I'm not sure which, I mean, I know it's target player, but I don't know if it's both, and I can't read the card from here, is dealt damage equal to the number of 1/1 counters, equal to the number of goblins devoured by Voracious Goblins. So we just talked about having 96 goblins from Krenko. You can make a 100/100 because 4 is base power and toughness, plus 96 is 100, and deal 96 to somebody. Somebody's probably dead. Unless they're playing an infinite life gain deck, they're probably dead. You just dealt 96 damage. Stop it, you're a mean person. Why am I showing you how to do these things? I don't know, I'm a bad person too. The last combo that we're going to talk about is, of course, Food Chain and Prossh. I already went over this combo, but I feel it's really important to know that if you can get Food Chain out and cast Prossh, you may have won the game. You may have won the game, especially if you have any haste engine, Perforos, Zulapur Cutthroat, and I think there might be one other one that I cannot remember off the top of my head. But I want you guys to understand something. This can be a dangerous combo. That means you are purposefully putting Prossh back in the command zone time after time after time after time. That commander attacks will add up. You could get to a point where Prossh is almost uncastable again. Do not do this into open mana. You don't want to be fogged. You don't want to be countered the last time. You don't want to be an idiot like me and attack into a Nevermval's disc that you forgot was untapped and lose everything and then scoop because you're sad and you don't know what to do with your life at this point. That's what I did. Don't do it. Okay? Alright, guys. That just about wraps up the most important parts of Prosh's Jund Goblin army. The deck list should be up on your screen now, so you can see all the other cards we didn't talk about. You can see there's a lot of removal, a lot of draw, a lot of ways to tutor the right cards out, specifically sometimes goblins. Overall, the deck was fairly expensive at just $400 in paper and $178 if you want to play this online. Overall, this might be the strongest brew that we've done so far out of the 3 because of all the combos, and there's a lot of tutor synergy to get the combos out. As for, I guess you could have put more tutors in. Same thing with Abzan, but goblins also have specifically goblin tutors, so that might make it a little bit stronger. And then there's just, you have big game enders like Praetor of Behemoth. One thing I didn't talk about is that there are a lot of token doublers, as you can see in the, when you're looking at it, you're right. There's Primal Vigor, Parallel Lives in the list, and if you wanted to spend even more money on the deck past the 400 or 178, depending on if it's in paper or online, you could sub in Doubling Season, take something out. Honestly, if it were me, I'd probably just take out Parallel Lives at that point. Or if you really wanted to depend on the token doublers, leave Parallel Lives in and take something else out. And then you'll have Primal Vigor, Parallel Lives, and Doubling Season all doubling the amount of tokens 3 times. It's going to get crazy. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech. It was a lot of fun to brew for you guys. The next episode is going to be is going to be exciting because it's going to be our last Commander 2017 prediction, and it's the only one we got right. It's Mardu Vampires. It was recently confirmed that that's going to be one of the 4 tribes. I'm not going to talk about the other ones yet because by the time this video comes out, I don't know if they'll fully revealed, and I don't want to talk about too much about leaks. or anything like that. That one was pretty much kind of sort of confirmed. I had a poll on my personal Twitter account about who should be the general for that deck, whether it's going to be the Mardu version Queen Marchesa or Zergo Helm Smasher. If you follow me on Twitter, you may already know the results of that poll by the time this video comes out, but if you don't, well, maybe you should be following me on Twitter. And you can do that by following me at DMCross on Twitter, and you can also follow the channel's account itself at Praetor Magic. Don't forget that we're starting our first giveaway. All you have to do is tweet one of the MagicOnline Commander League episodes with hashtag MOCL on Twitter, and you'll be entered for a chance to win one of the dual decks, Blessed vs. Cursed, when we hit 50 subs. And then we're going to do another one when we hit 100. So if you don't win the first one, don't worry about it. There's a chance to win the second one, and you're already entered. You don't have to retweet anything or go crazy like that. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/PraetorMagic. And if you enjoyed this brew, you know you gotta like and comment on the video telling me what you thought about the deck, what you didn't like, what you would do to change it, anything like that. Or even, hey, what do you plan on doing when Commander 2017 comes out? Are you gonna play the Mardu Vampire deck? By the time this video comes out, I'm sure the other products have been kind of talked about. Are you gonna play any one of the other 3 tribes that we didn't guess properly? Let me know in the comments down below. They're going to come out in August, so don't forget, you can pre-order now at wherever you want. I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I'm not going to promote anybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell on your way out to get notifications whenever we upload a video. Until next time, guys, that's all I got for y'all. Peace. Love y'all.